I'm Courtney Burton. I'm volunteer state president for AARP Minnesota, and I'm joined with AARP's own Ms. Elness, our advocate at the Minnesota State Capitol for Older Adults. One of my favorite things about AARP is that we are actively working every day to ensure that federal, state, and local decision makers are considering the needs of older adults. Welcome, Thomas. Thomas leads AARP's efforts at the Minnesota State Capitol. There are only a few days left in this year's legislative session, and I've been eager to catch up with him to get up to speed on what I understand has been a complex year for a variety of reasons. We have a lot to get through. And Thomas, I have 10 questions for you, and we have 10 minutes to get through them. Are you up for the challenge?
I think we can do it, Courtney. Let's have some fun. This is gonna be good.
All right, this sounds like a blast. Here we go. AARP Minnesota secured a big win to stop scams this year, banning cryptocurrency kiosks statewide. I learned in our last 10 in 10 session that these kiosks are scammers' favorite tool to steal money from victims, especially older adults. What was needed to get crypto kiosk banned in Minnesota?
Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, we heard bipartisan support for any effort to stop consumer fraud this session. And I think of people like Sister Agnes, who came and testified. This is a older Minnesotan who she's a Catholic nun, and she was convinced that she needed to put money in a cryptocurrency kiosk to resolve her issue. And we heard those stories over and over again from law enforcement. Really proud to have a bipartisan bill signed into law to stop those scams here in Minnesota.
Wow. And I think that's fascinating that you heard from law enforcement. So there's something there too. They're feeling it as well.
Yes.
Very cool. All right, question number 2. Housing and the ability to age in place are major issues for older Minnesotans. I hear a lot of my peers talking about issues with affordability, wishing that there were more housing options, and unfortunately, occasionally reading stories about issues with HOAs. What were the housing related issues AARP was advocating for, and what are those outcomes?
Sure. So there's two. Well, we know that housing impacts all ages here in Minnesota, and the impact on older adults is significant. We have a major housing shortage, and so AARP weighed in on two key issues this year. The first was dealing with some of the most egregious problems that we see in HOAs. So things like setting reasonable limits and fees, preventing aggressive and unjust property seizures, creating conflict of interest rules. So really pleased to share that that received broad bipartisan support as well and was recently signed into law. Something that we're still working on is a package of bills as part of a broad bipartisan coalition to just allow more housing to be built in Minnesota. And viewers might be happy to know that it's a no-cost proposal. These are all policy changes that could immediately help more housing be developed in our state.
That is really good news. Really good news. Now, along those lines, I know AARP is always looking and working hard to improve the fairness and protections for residents in long-term care and assisted living facilities. How will those facilities become safer and more transparent for their residents this year?
Yeah, we have lots of work to do still in this space. Minnesota was the very last state in the country to license assisted living, and that was fairly recently. And so, ever since that law has first passed, we've been making sure that not only are we protecting that law, but building on that to make sure that consumers, people who are living in assisted living and nursing facility, have just a basic fairness and safety that I think everyone expects. So things like making sure that somebody's actually going to show up when you push a call button with adequate staffing levels, stopping things like unnecessary guardianship to even be admitted or enrolled into an assisted living, reasonable policies about how do we use restraints, both manual, chemical, physical. So all of those protections that I think most Minnesotans simply expect, and we want to make sure that the law reflects what people need in those settings in our state.
Oh, thank you for that update. And that leads into some conversations and some questions about caregiving. So paid family and medical leave launched in January, and this gives Minnesota workers, including family caregivers, financial and job security while they need to be away from work to take care of loved ones. How are things going with the Paid Family Leave and Medical Act?
Another just incredible opportunity for Minnesota workers to be able to know that when life's moments require them to be away from work, that they will have financial and job security waiting for them when they return. And so I think of caregivers like Tony, who has been an AARP volunteer and told her story about needing that critical time away from work and what it meant to not have access to that. So you're exactly right, Courtney. On January 1st, families started to receive that benefit. Unfortunately, there were some efforts this legislative session to peel some of that away and make certain Minnesotans ineligible, people who work at small businesses or in certain seasonal places, to not have access to this program that is so critically important for Minnesotans. And so far, we've been able to fight off all of those proposals.
Thank you for those efforts. As someone who has done caregiving, it is absolutely critical to have as much support as possible. So that's a big win for all caregivers. Last year, I remember talking to my lawmakers about AARP's idea to create a consumer fraud restitution fund to help fraud victims recover some of those losses. So how are things going with the Consumer Fraud Restitution Fund?
This is a pretty awesome law, and I think I will not be surprised if the rest of the country tries to follow a similar path as AARP Minnesota did on this law. Because we have a fundamental issue here where people who are defrauded in the state of Minnesota, they'll often try to recover what they've lost from the person who defrauded them, but that money is gone or overseas or out of reach. And so last year we tried to address this fundamental issue by creating a fund with state money that's paid to the state of Minnesota when someone does a bad act. They are forced by a court to pay the state of Minnesota a portion of funds. And we said, why don't we use some of that to help people who have been victims of fraud directly? So we have some language that we're working on this legislative session to make sure that that continues to roll out well. But the good news is there's already money going out to scam and fraud victims in Minnesota. It's great news.
That is awesome news. That is awesome. Another issue that's gotten to be near and dear to my heart, AARP works really hard to ensure that consumers have choice as we age. Last year, there were major changes in our Medicare insurance laws, specifically Medicare supplemental insurance or Medigap, which includes things like age limits on the right to purchase a Medigap plan and lifetime penalties for certain people. Is there a chance of fixing this?
We'll see. You laid it out really well. I mean, Minnesota last session stepped completely out of the norm from what any other state had decided to do with our Medicare supplemental insurance laws, and create a age limit on certain guaranteed issue rights or the ability to purchase a plan, even if you have a pre-existing condition, as well as creating lifetime financial penalties. And so both of these things are really problematic for AARP. And we've heard from our members about how challenging the idea of accepting sort of those terms for accessing Medicare. Courtney, you know as well as I do, talking to our members, that Medicare is right up there with Social Security in terms of most important issues to older adults. It's how they think about what they want to vote for. It's how they think about what's important to them, because it's a critical piece of life as an older adult in Minnesota and in the United States. And so there's still work to be done on that. Could be an interesting next couple of days to see what comes of that, if anything.
Yeah, that when I found out the details of that one, it kind of blew me away that I'd need to make decisions, 20 years looking out, that I would have no clue of what information I'd need to make that decision because of this change in the law. So
Yes.
we'll keep working on this one. We'll keep working on this one.
Yes.
Every state right now is working to implement a new law that requires changes to things like work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP. How might family caregivers be impacted by those changes?
Sure. So the federal law requires for the first time that folks 55 to 64 who are receiving SNAP or previously known as food stamp benefits, that they are completing work requirements. And similar rules are going to impact people in the Medicaid expansion population. So what this really means is that the state has to impose rules that match the federal law. This is something that we expect to be worked out likely in the next couple of days here at the end of session. But for AARP, we want to make sure at the very least that we're recognizing that caregiving is work. I think it's deeply offensive, frankly, to tell caregivers that what they're doing is not work. I think it's often the hardest work you can do. It's 24/7, it's 365. And so we need to recognize that in our state law.
I could not agree more on all of those points, Thomas. AARP is on a mission to empower people to choose how they live as they age. One of the best ways to do that is ensuring Minnesotans have retirement savings. And as we all know, there are far too many people that don't even have access to the possibility of a workplace retirement plan. So my question is, Minnesota's Secure Choice Retirement Program helps address that issue. What's the latest on this new option for Minnesota workers, Thomas?
I mean, you're exactly right. So 1 in 3 Minnesotans go to work, they collect a paycheck, and they have no workplace retirement savings option to put a portion of their funds into. That's what the Secure Choice Retirement Program is set out to fix. And fortunately, that program is already rolling out. There's over 2,500 Minnesotans who now have a retirement account that didn't have one before because of this program. There's some technical changes to make sure that the rollout continues to be smooth that we've helped champion this session, and expect those to pass here in the next couple of days.
Big win, big win. Fingers crossed that everything comes across the finish line.
Thank you.
Now I've got a fun question because you've been a busy guy, and I'm just kind of listening to all the things that you've been working on this session. Now that the session's almost over, so what's on the docket for summer for you this year?
Oh man, summer is coming, isn't it, Courtney? We got to get through these last couple of days of session, and then I think I'll spend some time outside playing with my boys. Hopefully, get a round of golf or two in, and just enjoy the summer. They're short in Minnesota, so we got to soak it up while we've got it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're getting close to the end, and I have one more question to ask. I imagine that some people in the audience would love to help out at the state capitol or just spread the word about these issues that are affecting the 50-plus population. What are ways that people in our audience can engage with AARP in advocating solutions?
Yes, your voices are critical here at the Capitol. There's plenty of folks like me in suits, but it's important for people to hear from you all out in the state as well. And so I think sign up to be an e-activist. We'll have a link for how you can get more information on that. If you're ready, sign up to be a volunteer with AARP. We bring folks to the Capitol all the time to talk to their lawmakers, and we hear overwhelmingly that it's a really great way to be involved. Have a community of folks like you who care about making the world a better place and doing it with AARP.
Awesome. Well, we did it, Thomas. Thank you for that. We've completed our 10 and 10 challenge. I hope that's good for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all the incredible work you and AARP are doing to support older adults across Minnesota. If you wish to keep up to date on Minnesota's work at the legislature with AARP, you can click the link in the description to sign up to be an AARP activist. If you're interested in supporting the 50-plus community in advocacy, events, fraud protection, and more, go to the description to learn how you could become an AARP volunteer. I strongly encourage you to check that out. And if you have a story about any of the topics that we discussed today that you want to share, we'd love to hear from you. Click the link in this description to our story collection form and share your experience. Thank you again, Thomas, for all you do. We so appreciate you. And thank you to everyone who took the time to hang out with us for this 10 in 10 session. Have a great day.
Thanks, Courtney. See ya.